Welcome back, intellectuals, to another episode of our podcast. Today's discussion is a controversial and vital topic for anyone in winning contracts. We're peeling back the layers of traditional color team reviews, examining their pitfalls, and exploring innovative approaches that promises to revolutionize this crucial aspect of proposal development. Rebecca Link, an industry expert in proposals and business development, joins us to navigate this complex topic. With a career spanning over 13 years, Rebecca's expertise extends far beyond leading successful and highly functional teams. She's a trailblazer in harnessing the power of artificial intelligence and large language models, which is redefining what's possible in the federal proposal industry. Outside the office, she's a super mom to two wonderful children and has a green thumb with a knack for gardening. Her unique blend of strategic acumen, technological savvy, and leadership makes her a frequently sought after speaker and APMP contributor. Rebecca, it's great to have you with us here today on the show, and I'm personally thrilled about this discussion regarding color teams. To our intellectuals tuning in, Rebecca's here to share her professional journey and her visionary approach to reimagining the proposal color team process in today's fast-paced, tech-driven landscape. Rebecca, please say hello to our listeners and give us a sneak peek into your world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited about this topic today. It's something I've been noodling on for quite some time. I've been around the block. I started out as a writer, found a love and a knack for proposal management, learned how to be an orals coach, and have had the opportunity to build teams and help organizations meet their goals. And then most recently have fallen in love with AI and really been diving in head first, trying out all these new tools that are emerging into our space. And it's just exciting and phenomenal what this can do for us. And so I'll definitely be sharing a couple little tidbits about how to leverage AI in color team reviews in our discussion today, because I think that is going to be a differentiator moving forward. So thanks again for having me, and let's get into it. Let's do this.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for me to balance you and speaking AI. So I'm just going to put that out there.
I've already talked myself off the ledge that I'm not going to make this all about AI. I promise.
Right. And so sometimes we do a little bit of a drinking game. So every time Rebecca says AI, all of our intellectuals need to drink. So let's keep that count.
A lot of hospital trips. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rebecca, before we start our discussion, I'd like to ask you a personal question about a chronic problem that I have. Given your knack for keeping plants alive, which parallels do you see between nurturing your garden and fostering successful proposal teams?
That's a fantastic question and a really great kind of analogy. I think so here's the secret, right? I'm what you would call a lazy gardener. I've got all my little seedlings in cups downstairs starting inside right now to be transplanted. And you kind of have to nurture them and watch them grow a little bit. But once I put them in the garden, I go and I check on them, and I love seeing their growth and their progress. But for the most part, I leave them alone. Nature has a beautiful way of kind of handling its own business sometimes. And I think that there's magic in that with people too, right? I think that there's a difference between supervising and uplifting or upskilling someone and being a support. And support looks different to everybody, right? So yeah, I think the secret sauce is actually trusting the plants and trusting your people to be the best versions of themselves and kind of enjoying that growth that happens with that magic.
Yeah, because I think in our industry, and you've witnessed it, I know I have, is that there are some proposal development professionals that are very heavy-handed. They're very authoritarian. They like to kind of wield and throw around, this power or this onus over the organization. And I think that kind of stifles and makes people not really enjoy a very stressful type of activity in general. Like proposals development is not something that is easy for people. And so I think it is really kind of critical to find that healthy balance between a heavy guiding hand and something that's a little bit too much intervention.
Yeah, I like keeping with the plant metaphor, that's the decision when to throw fertilizer on there and what kind of fertilizer to use, right? But yeah, I joke in proposal management, you kind of have to be like a payday bar. You have to be the right combination of sweet and salty because you need to be approachable and likable, but you also have to get things done at the same time. So we'll stick with the fertilizer. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really hard for me because I'm a super driver and a tiger mom. So I have only grown into this new style that is Ton Wilson. Because if we're going to talk about plants, let's just all be fair. I do have a problem with that. I love them. I bring them home, and my husband calls them Ton's little house of horrors because it's where plants come to die. And it's not intentional. It's just sometimes I overwater and like try to force things. And I know when we were in Virginia, I loved hydrangea plants. And this poor hydrangea bush traveled and got replanted like 3 times in one season. And my husband's just like, find a home for it already, like stop putting it through all this stress and like rehoming it in different places. So
that's funny.
It's definitely something you have to grow into. So anyways, that's such a cool comparison, Rebecca. And it makes me think about the care and environment we provide not only for our plants, but our teams. And so speaking of like nurturing environments, let's kind of take that theme and kind of pull that thread a little bit. Let's chat about how we've both kind of wrestled with it. The whole ordeal of like, our topic today is not about proposal teams, but traditional color team reviews. And color teams are the bane of my existence. It's challenging for every organization and every proposal. And sometimes it often feels like we're just kind of going through the motions, checking the boxes, rather than just really genuinely trying to improve our proposals. So what's your take on the state or the color team conundrum, I guess, that we're calling it in this day and age? And so what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I remember when you and I first kind of had our initial collaboration session, and I was like, something I've been thinking about for a long time is, like death to the debrief, right? If I sit in one more debrief that really yields inactionable things or we're just passing a microphone around and no one has anything of value to say that anyone can really go and do anything with. That's been something on my mind for a long time. But it's not just that, right? There are things that precede it that get you to that point, right? So what missteps are we taking in this process? And, are we essentially just doing process for the sake of process? And we all follow the Shipley Bible and, we do our pink, red, gold religiously, hopefully, or some form and fashion of a first draft, second draft, third draft with the goal of having incremental improvements through each milestone. Why is that not happening? And why has this become painful and therefore also negatively affecting the quality and outcome of our proposals and potentially our win probabilities? Yeah, it's been on my mind for quite some time. And there's some key things that I have identified because it's not something that I've just sat and complained about. I have been on a mission to figure out what can be done to fix this. And they sound like you and I are going to talk about all these things and they sound like easy fixes, but there's a commitment. There's a price tag that comes with the things that we're going to suggest today. And some of them are more costly than others from a time and resource perspective. However, if you all are feeling the same way that we are, where you're like, oh my gosh, if I sit in one more meaningless debrief, or if our color teams are not yielding the results that we want, what is the definition of insanity, right? Really do the same thing over and over and we scratch our head why it's not changing. So maybe it is time to implement some changes, and maybe it is time to ask different things of different people throughout the proposal life cycle to yield better results.
Yeah. So I guess let's all just really kind of be clear, because I like to use humor in a lot of what I do. And so when we came up with the title for this episode, death to the color teams, it's a little trite. I get it. So yeah, we're in no way, for those of you who are first-time listeners and are experiencing the beauty of Rebecca and Todd live in a person here, is that we say everything with a little bit of tongue in cheek, but there's a lot of truth behind some of what we're saying here, is that we're not saying throw away the Shipley approach, right? The Shipley methodology. So I don't need, message.
We're going to get hate mail. We're going to get all the hate mail after this.
I don't need hate mail. I don't need anyone from Shipley, coming to me and be like, I can't believe, but I think that they of all people too, and others who have been veterans in this industry like we are, know you can't keep doing it the same way. And I want to make sure that the new generation, the emerging leaders, those that are coming up behind us, those that are looking to us as models and examples of, how to do things the right way, is that I want to make sure that they understand, and this is always how I do color teams, is to really clearly explain, why do we do this, right? Why are we doing a color team review? What is the outcome that we want from the color team review? And there's no one standard. I think that's the fallacy of trying to follow the Shipley approach. There's no one standard. There's no one consistent approach. It's whatever works for your organization. And sometimes it depends on the size of your organization. A lot of times it depends on the complexity of the opportunity. You're not going to run a full-on black hat, blue team, pink. If you want to go all colors of the rainbow on a task order response,
right,
for a BPA or an IDIQ, it's just not reasonable. It is not meant to be used that way too. So yeah, I just want to kind of put out that disclaimer right now before we.
Good that you did that. It'll save us some heartache there. Yeah, absolutely. Just to echo that, like we are firm believers that, that there needs to be some process in whatever you're doing. Maybe it just needs to be redefined, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So exactly. You hit the nail right on the head, Rebecca. So again, sometimes it's like we're doing color teams reviews with our eyes like half closed or half open. Depends on how you want to look at it, right? If you want to be optimistic, half open. But just like I'm having my coffee right now, we need to kind of wake up, smell the coffee, and move on to the next part. So, this segment here is going to be called Strategic Reawakening. I think we all need to kind of wake up a little bit. And let's chat about like setting the stage right with some solid strategic planning before even thinking about color team reviews. And so this is the whole premise behind why I started this podcast, Tan's 2 cents, is that it is unfiltered strategies for real world success, thinking and being more strategic. So it's all about getting, like everyone rowing in the same direction, singing from the same sheet of music, whatever you want to do that. So how do we get everyone on the right path into being more strategic when it comes to color team reviews?
Yeah. First and foremost, it is completely unrealistic to ask for the time, attention, and effort of a reviewer on a live proposal. Full stop. If the proposal's live, and you're coming to me and you're like, hey, I need you on Tuesday to be a pink reviewer. Here's the link to the solicitation. Go read it. And then you can come and perform a review. That is insane to think that you're going to get my best quality work as a reviewer if that's how you're approaching the situation. And 9 times out of 10, that is what we're doing. And so there's a couple red flags there, right? Why is this happening? Is it a breakdown in process where this is just how you've always done it and like this is just what you do? Is it because you're not in front of your deals in a meaningful way where you can kind of do that really good pre-work and capture and solution activity? So there's a couple red flags going on there. So I think first and foremost, you must engage your review team early. And early is where I'll leave it flexible, right? I'm not, gonna be stringent with like where I think that should happen, because as Tom mentioned, size of your team, size of your deals, there's a lot of variables, right? But you need to decide where that right moment is. And it's not on a live proposal. That's where we're going to draw the line, right? So identify who these people are a rough idea of what you're going to need from them: time, quantity, expectations, and heaven forbid, now this is where I'm going to get real wild here, include them in your capture and solutioning sessions. Because what a more valuable and meaningful reviewer they will become when they know and learn, not by you sending them a link when the proposal drops to all of the reference material you'd like for them to look at before Tuesday. But if they're jumping into some working sessions and they're watching the deal be shaped and they're learning what is going to happen, that what success looks like on that specific proposal. Call me crazy. This is, like I said, this is not like revolutionary stuff. It's not difficult. This is not, rocket science here, but it is an ask. It is a time commitment. It's a resource commitment, and it's maybe a different way of doing things than you're used to. But that, first and foremost, I think is one of the key things that would make a significant difference for me if we're addressing why our color teams are breaking down.
I don't think I've ever thought or have ever seen, and maybe I have and I haven't realized it, having and asking people to be on a kickoff or at the onset of a proposal. That kickoffs, again, that's like a whole episode in itself. Is like kickoffs are never done properly.
No,
they're always done at the wrong time. There's never the right people, like at the kickoff who should be there. But, companies are so overbooked with meetings and, commitments and stuff. And a lot of times, again, like we'll talk about this later, is integrating your reviewers earlier, which I think is controversial. I'm going to play devil's advocate in that segment too about that, because, we don't shy away from controversy here. But having and even knowing who's going to be involved with just the writing aspects of it is the biggest challenge
right.
at like so we're really not kind of thinking about that, which kind of brings me back to process a little bit. And you're really kind of asking industry to kind of create or re-engineer a process that is currently not in place, because everything kind of works chronologically. Maybe highly functional organizations or those who are really successful kind of do this. But, have you been able to kind of do this in other places before and seen it work?
I have tried, I'll put it that way. I've tried, and it is, that's why I said it. It is a commitment, and it's a time commitment and a resource commitment. And it's hard, right? Because even finding reviewers, as a proposal manager, finding reviewers that can add value and who are available can even be a challenge. And so again, it's another advocacy point though, for finding them early. Know who's going to be involved in this proposal. It's crazy to me to think that you're going to have your best outcome when you're scrambling. And so, yes, maybe we've made some improvements on the writing side where we're identifying writers earlier, right? Like, okay, who's the SME here? Who's going to be able to complete the content for this? But why not reviewers? Yeah. And I know, it's so hard because organizations do get tapped for, with their resources. You have delivery teams, people that are on, client site or whatever the case may be. And so it's a big ask. But I do think that it is becoming vitally important to engage these folks early. And you made a good point too, like kickoff, at least invite the reviewers to kickoff, because hopefully if your kickoff is thorough, you've got that opportunity overview, you kind of touch on the capture plan and you go over the competitive and strategic information. And then the proposal manager goes over the proposal cycle plan and all that stuff. And at least you're giving them that benefit of getting up to speed. But here's the thing, right? The people that are asked to be reviewers, they complain too. They hate being asked, getting a calendar invite 48 hours in advance and having something slapped on their calendar that they have to scramble and, prepare for. And then I'm sure that they would probably also complain about additional meetings on their calendar for a proposal that's not even live yet. there's the sense of urgency left of proposal is different than when the actual clock begins ticking, right? When the solicitation's live.
Sure.
But so it's a mindset shift. But also, if you sit and ask yourself, honestly, if you answer this question, could this improve the quality of the team, of the proposal, of the messaging, of all the things, you'd be hard pressed to say no.
Yeah. No, I agree with, and I was playing slight devil's advocate on that question, because I think this is where a lot of times we as proposal consultants are asked to kind of come in and do color team reviews. Those are my favorite types of engagements, where I'm asked to kind of come in and evaluate a proposal, because I understand as a consultant and someone who's been in the business for over 20 plus years, is I understand the importance of it. And so by my involvement, I'm able to demonstrate and show how a color team review should be properly, and what the best outcomes, or what what a successful color team is for a customer. And so a lot of times they don't know, because again, they're kind of going through the motions. They're using checklists. I swear, if I get asked one more time for a color review checklist, I may scream, because exactly, right? So color teams is not just like a checklist, like activity. But I think that's a really good place to interject, if you're bringing in a consultant for like reviews, would be for something like this.
Yeah. And one thing I'm going to interrupt really quick that just popped into my mind that I think organizations have forgotten: proposals are a team sport, right? They are not an individual performance sport. And everybody's livelihood within an organization and a company is dependent on and relies on the success of business development and proposals. And I think that if we can start to work back toward that mindset, then maybe some of these shifts might not feel so uncomfortable, because it's in everybody's best interest. It's in the company's best interest. And maybe it wouldn't seem like such a time suck or such an inconvenience to be asked to get involved earlier, if we remember that this is all for the greater good, right? This is all for we joke about winning. Yes, winning is great, but what does that win actually mean? That means that the lights are on. That means that you have a job. That means that you get a bonus this year. That means that, there's a lot behind that. And so when we look at that from that's like the big picture, right? Where we kind of went from being a color reviewer, or when to engage a color reviewer, to literally keeping the lights on.
Yeah. But it is truly understanding the impacts of what winning really kind of means. So totally agree. So, getting that whole foundation of understanding, I think is really vital. And speaking of getting things right from the start, let's move on to getting the right crew for the review, right? It's like forming a dream team, let's call it, our color team review dream team. We need to pull together a color team that brings more to the table than just a warm body, or someone who drew the short stick, of the day, or someone who had a free gap in their schedule, all into like a meeting room or into a meeting time. It's really about having the right mix of expertise and insights on the team. So let's dive into how to assemble. What does your dream review team look like, and how can that make a difference? We already know it makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So this is where the first time, everybody get your shot, your drink of choice ready. Here comes the AI.
Oh no.
Here it comes. First and foremost, I think so we'll talk about just internal people right now. I think having a mix of people is crucial, right? I think that it's great to pull in another proposal person, right? Let's say I'm a proposal manager and I'm like, hey, Tan, you got a couple cycles, and at least assign, especially a section that might need some extra love or something. See if a proposal team member can jump in and be a reviewer. It's good experience and skill reinforcement for your proposal staff to participate in reviews, and their eyeballs are trained in the right ways to look for certain things. Your capture manager and your business development executive who own the deal must participate. So here we go, controversial topic, right? If you have an account manager or a BD person that thinks their job is done after they've brought the deal in-house, like then you're not really doing great business development. They have value. They know the deal. They know the customer. They've done the legwork. You absolutely want them as a reviewer. Capture manager, solution strategist, whatever, your the makeup of your team looks like, absolutely. They should be writing the executive summary, making sure that all of that front matter pre-work makes its way into that final written project or proposal rather, and working in tandem with the proposal manager to see this to the finish line. You need executive leadership, whatever that looks like at your organization, either the line VP or, business unit executive. If you're a smaller organization, sometimes you might even have a C-suite person on there, a CGO or someone like that. They add value too, right? This is, they are responsible for overseeing everything that goes out the door. So yeah, you want to get their buy-in, maybe not at pink, right? Maybe they're red or gold. You can kind of pick and choose who your team is there, right? Because by the time we're at gold, the idea is that we've got a smaller kind of need to be their team anyway, because we've gone through the appropriate process and channels to refine and iterate our proposal. And so it should be in good shape by gold, right? Perfect world scenario. And then you really need those SMEs. We don't want to drink the bathwater by having people that wrote the content also review the same content they wrote. You can shuffle them up a little bit, maybe take a technical, right? Someone that wrote on the technical and, ask if they can do a management section. Now, I'm using the mindset, and you can probably tell by the way I'm talking that like, you have to also, you're bound by who is available and who you have in your organization. So take what I'm saying, and formulate it in a way that makes sense for your organization, because everybody kind of has a different team structure. But I think the moral of what I'm saying is you want a combination. You want executive leadership or just leadership in general. You want some proposal minds and eyeballs. You want the capture and BD. You want the full, business development team or growth team that's involved in that deal. And then you're going to want some SMEs, right? Either they've been writers and you can put them on different sections to review, or maybe they just are experts across the organization and can lend value by looking at what the team has put together. So those are people, actual physical people. Now, enter AI. And I'm just going to take a quick left turn real quick. And even in the last couple of weeks, I have seen a couple new AI tools that have left me speechless with what their capabilities are. So I'll just leave that there. Different podcast, different day. But with the capabilities of these new models that we're seeing, it is not unrealistic to think that the future might hold an AI-driven pink team where you've got the AI first draft, or you come up with a first draft, or you've done some work or whatever, and maybe the proposal manager. And here's another quick left turn. We're going to start seeing new people emerge, I think, within growth organizations that are their sole purpose is to drive and leverage AI type tools and streamlining things across an organization. Because when you make an investment into a tool like that, you should use it, and you should have somebody that's a champion for that. So maybe that person is working with the proposal team to leverage AI to take writing sections and filter it through the model along with the solicitation requirements. And because pink team is a lot about, are we on the right path, right? We don't have a fully baked proposal yet. We're kind of like, does this make sense? Is this starting to answer the mail? Some basic stuff. So before you are asking other individuals in your organization to spend time and resources on color team reviews, what if we were able to do some of that legwork before and get an even more mature, we'll call it a dark pink or a light red or whatever you want to call it, some middle ground proposal done and reviewed before it even actually gets to humans. Yeah. So we'll just park that there.
So you took two left turns, and
I know.
I think we're almost around.
Everyone's drunk now that's been playing the drinking game. Now they're drunk.
I think we're almost around the block, but There were a couple of things that you said that really resonated with me and resembled kind of what I like to do from a color team review too. Is yes, wholeheartedly agree. I think using and leveraging AI solutions in color team reviews is definitely here and is on the forefront of where we're moving towards, whether it's iteratively as you write them prior to, like any type of color team reviews. It's already here. I personally use it myself. I That's one of the best ways that I like to leverage AI is to find differences and variations, and did we hit the mark? Did we miss the mark? Where, how can we improve it? So I kind of make certain recommendations like that, like from a reviewer perspective too. So yes, I just spilled the beans on myself. Ton Wilson uses AI for color team reviews. I own it.
Everybody's doing it.
I
Everybody's
know.
doing it.
I embrace it. I get it. With the caveat that we always need to kind of put out there is make sure that you are protecting your company privacy and IP and information, right? So again, this discussion is not about, cybersecurity, AI, data privacy. That's a whole other podcast in our series here. So we will definitely, like be touching on that in like another episode. However, I have encountered previously organizations where they already have designated color team reviewers. So they already know, regardless of what proposal, this proposal, analyst or this proposal person in the proposal ops shop always does a horizontal compliance review on the document, which is fantastic. And I think peer reviews by reviewing each other's, like proposals when you're not engaged on your own proposals is good. It keeps your skills sharp. It gives you eyes and you can leverage other things. You can learn maybe what one proposal manager or one proposal team does. And maybe you can kind of integrate that into your own, into your own opportunity. That I think is a industry best practice. It's something that everybody should be leveraging. I have been within organizations where they have people who they know are the pickiest people. And so I think if you're looking from traits or qualifications or, like what would make a really good color team member, it's those people who are like bull terriers. They find something, they'll take it, they'll pull it out. They are very, very diligent about, finding and bringing that. I think that's like really important. And I agree too, is from an executive perspective, or at least someone from a C-suite, you need someone at that level because they see things at an enterprise level. They see things at a larger whole level than the technical SMEs and experts, because proposals are very much in the weeds, right? During the whole proposal development and writing process, you're deep into this and you got to like pull your head out of the proposal every once in a while and kind of look at it, from an enterprise level. Is this something that we can do not only profitably? Is this a sound solution? Are we hitting the marks with themes and, and understanding the customer? Or are we just kind of missing something? And so by having those different people who sit in different seats and maybe have a very different perspective or a different, dog in the fight, I think is really kind of important.
Yeah. And when you get to a point where, if by red team, you guys just kind of feel stagnant and stuck, and it's like, this is just not moving forward, or like our messaging is just not getting where it needs to go. I love fresh eyes. And that is the only time that I will advocate for picking up the phone and calling somebody and slapping something on their calendar that they were not expecting in the 11th hour. Is like, hey, we need help, right? Like, it's an SOS. Yeah. It's not bad process or bad practice. It's like, hey, we're stuck.
Yeah.
And can you share some time to help us? So I think there's value there too, right? So I love the idea of having a predefined team of people, or at least a handful of go-tos that are available and part of, that review team. But don't be afraid to kind of think out of the box too. And I think we're going to get into it, but something that I do feel passionately about, just having worked for smaller organizations or businesses that have graduated and are really trying to mature out their proposal processes and proposal centers and business development stuff, is organizational level, and I like to open it up at like literally for anybody in the company, maybe at the learning management, if the company has like a learning management system or tool they use. I have put together over the years, I think it's up to like 9 modules, and I usually do them as lunch and learns. And anybody in the company can come and attend them. If you want to learn more about the procurement process and best practices and things like that, anybody can come. But mandatory for folks in the growth organization to really level set the expectations of what should be happening and when and who's responsible for what. But one of the modules is how to be a good color reviewer. And taking this just 10 steps to the left, right? I think that if you do that, so we were talking a couple minutes ago about, getting people engaged and involved early in the process, but you can get somebody engaged early, but if they also don't have that basic training and understanding of what a color team is and like what is expected of them at the basic level. So that's something I think is cool too, is teaching and training your entire organization just on best practices, because then again, you're arming these people and you're setting them up for success, and having those refreshers maybe once a year for new employees or whatever across your organization really helps with this too, because you're not going to pick up the phone and call somebody who's never been on a color review before and doesn't really understand the foundational aspects of it and expect them to lend a ton of value, right? So training, I think, is important as well, making sure that people understand their participation in these activities.
Yeah, totally agree. So having the right people in the room at the table is and can be a game changer. But so let's take we've got the right people, but how do we make the most out of their insights once we've got them? This is a chronic problem when it comes to feedback. And so let's kind of reimagine, the feedback model. So it's time to kind of toss out this whole, and purple's my favorite color. I do color teams in like purple, so it's, less offensive. But I think it's really time to kind of toss out this whole, like, I'm going to red pen and red line approach, to color team reviews, and really start thinking about feedback and providing feedback that's critical, constructive, inspirational. And so for the emerging leaders out there who are coming up into this industry, you have to kind of realize sometimes it's okay to go to red, or it's okay to go to color team and not have a great product, because sometimes, like you said previously, the development team hits a brick wall. You've really kind of hit the point where maybe you've been working on this for months and months and months in the draft process, and you can't quite, see your way beyond where you're at right now. How do we kind of turn all the great feedback? Let's say, you're getting some good feedback from people who are really well trained or understand this whole process, and kind of turn that into a catalyst that kind of pushes the proposal. Because I've been in proposals where the feedback has stayed in the feedback form or on that debrief slide and has never seen the light of day from the recovery team perspective. We're laughing because we've been on those teams. We've seen it happen, and I've seen writers totally ignore. And that's
actually normal, unfortunately.
Right? And that's not to say that you have to adjudicate and accept all the color team feedback, because sometimes they are just way off base. And I'm like, thanks for that, but no thanks. I'm going to pass. That's a hard pass on that one. So how do we make sure that those good recommendations and feedback make it into the proposal?
Yeah. So first and foremost, if you're finding comments from reviewers that are unactionable or don't add value or whatever,
Don't invite them back.
you need to go train that person.
Right.
Because that's not an option, right? That they're not invited back. They're absolutely going to be asked to review another proposal. So I think we also get in the habit of being like, oh, we know John, and his comments or whatever. And then we just keep letting John make crappy comments in every single proposal that we do. So
true.
Right? So red flag, fix that. But with the friends that do leave, feedback and things. So this goes back to the early engagement of the reviewers. setting the having them part of the process and part of the design of the messaging, the approach, and, the solution and the themes that are supposed to end up in this proposal, because that is when you're going to get the most meaningful comments. So let's pretend we've done that. We've got some great comments from folks. And what you just described is what we have been seeing as normal, right? Where the review happens, the comments are left, the proposal manager goes through them, kind of does whatever cleanup they can. And then we get on a debrief and the writers are kind of like informed about where are the areas that are, needing improvement. And then the microphone's passed around. Everyone's like, I'd like to echo what Jim said. And I think that this section needs a little bit of work. And then we want to unalive ourselves. So, what happens is after that debrief, the writers, it's like, all right, here, go fix your sections. We're in the recovery phase now. And they are alone on this recovery island by themselves often, or with the proposal manager, taking their little boat around and checking on everyone on their islands. The reviewers you're not off the hook. So here we are again with another ask, another process change, another kind of thought, overhaul here about what the expectation of being a reviewer on a proposal is. This is a long-term commitment. We are entering into a long-term relationship, you and I, okay? We are monogamous, we are hanging out, we are in a committed relationship now together for the next however long. And if I had my way, as we've been talking about, that would be a really long time, maybe even a year. I said it.
That's horrible.
I said what I said. What if we were doing really good business development and capture, and we are really ahead of our deals, and we're meeting with our customers, and we're defining and designing solutions that met their needs, and we're doing the front work. And when that proposal comes out, it's shaped, we're ready, we've got the right people and the right stuff all together. This is perfect world, yes? What if? Right. I know. So let me come back to reality here. Baby steps. The reviewer is not off the hook. You don't just get to come and we call it swoop and poop, right? You don't come and swoop in, poop all over the document and then leave. You have got to make yourself also available to the writers to help them navigate. We talk about leaving good comments, right? So the difference between saying, please consider rewording this, or, please, this doesn't seem like it's answering the mail. Help them. Yeah. How is it not answering the mail? What's missing? Could you rewrite it better? Take a swing at it, take a stab at it.
Yeah.
Either your comments are going to be so substantive that they're incredibly helpful and the writer's like, thank you, I'm good. Or you're going to leave some comments. The writer's going to be like, I need help. I don't know where to go. The proposal manager can certainly help, but the reviewer must make themselves available during the recovery process as well. And heaven forbid, maybe even pick up the pen and write a couple things, if that's what help looks like, right? What does help look like? And I don't think reviewers really think about that. They're like, I'm here to review and I've been asked to leave my comments, and they do that and then they leave. That's not helpful.
No, it's not. But I think the other thing too is just to kind of, be fair, because there's a lot of bad practices that are out there and bad habits, is that, and this is why I'm a huge advocate to have a color team review leader who is not the proposal manager, because I've seen color team reviews run by proposal managers that literally are on autopilot. They debrief the slides and then that's it. And they never ask any other questions. I think sometimes they feel that we're here at the debrief and receive mode. Somehow the debriefers are going to, I don't know, give us all of this air of wisdom of, what the findings are, and it's just going to magically happen. No, sometimes the proposal manager, or whoever the color team review lead is, needs to kind of extract back or challenge the reviewers. What do you mean by this? Or no, this is, there's debriefing is I take debriefing as a two-way street. It's not just us hearing the findings. It's
Right.
also understanding, why did you say that? Or what
Yeah.
is the
So this is where I started, right? This is where, and so when you and I first started kind of noodling what we
yeah.
wanted to talk about, and I was like, I've been having this in my head, this death to the debrief. I started with the debrief and wanting it to die and go away. And so I was like, how do I fix this? So it actually started, this whole thing started for me with the debrief and it being just so many red flags about why this isn't working. And so I kind of came up with the idea, and I think you were just touching on a little bit, and I've coined a term for it, and I call it a reverse debrief. And so it's actually led by the writers instead of the reviewers.
So I think that this goes into like our next segment, right?
Okay.
Which is turning like the critiques and the feedback to initiate a new way of recovery, which is what we're coining like the pre-writing collaboration, which is imagine if you could get like, and we've kind of laid the foundation for this, where you get the color teams involved before the writing at the kickoff, and having them kind of understand and be aware of what our strategy is and what our approach is going to be, which is really a bit controversial. It really is in conflict with the belief and industry understanding that you, color team reviewer, are standing in the shoes of the evaluator. That's basically and one of the tenets of the instructions that you're given during most color team reviews is that you are sitting here and evaluating this proposal as a government evaluator against the evaluation factors and the instructions. And we're asking them to add like value and detail into the proposal, providing like independent type of, feedback. That principle supports the idea of this whole fresh set of eyes to avoid any type of biasness or blind sides or things like that. What you're about to talk about is an entire pre-writing phase where we're getting the color team reviewers engaged earlier rather than later. That's really controversial.
Yeah. And I think, you want to arm these people with as much as you possibly can to make them successful. I heard you say, oh, they're supposed to come and act as an evaluator. How many people in your organization actually know how to do that?
Yeah.
Like you have to take the time to teach and train these people. I've seen, another thing that we haven't even mentioned, which is funny, is like scorecards. I've seen the use, I've developed scorecards on my own, against evaluation criteria. They're updated and changed for every opportunity, asking people to complete scorecards in addition to leaving actionable feedback and
Like
comments.
pulling teeth. It's like pulling teeth sometimes to get them to do
I know,
that.
well, because it's one more thing. It's one more thing. And so we are, again, I know we're asking so much of people and of growth organizations that is maybe it feels unorthodox, but man, are you tired of are you ready for death to the debrief? Because like that's where we've gotten. So maybe we have to try some things a little different. So again, flipping it up on its head and having it be more writer led. So what I had started to try out and advocate for is before you get on the debrief with everyone, with the reviewers, whatever, the writers have a writer's debrief led by the proposal manager or the color lead or whoever. And everybody looks at their stuff and looks at the comments and like really takes some time with it. Give it an hour. We can spare an hour. Yeah, maybe. I know. Hour. If it's a real big honking proposal, maybe you need a couple hours, right? Do that. And then have the writers come to the debrief and have the writers, say, okay, Bob, I saw you said this. I don't understand, or can you help me? Or I'm going to need, because again, this is solving the problem of them ending up on the island, right? They have a lot more ownership and control of what is going on and making sure that they are entering into this recovery phase with everything they need. And to the point where it's like, hey, Ton, I'm going to need an hour of like one-on-one with you to walk through this because I'm obviously like missing the mark and like I need some help. And it should be a time to, maybe you do need to put together a little tiger team because section 2, or task area 2 is just behind. Okay, let's pause, let's back up, let's regroup, let's bring in a couple, fresh eyes, new people, SME, whatever. But it shouldn't just be passing a microphone around, reading comments that are there, talking about scorecard slides, whatever. We have to do more. We have to go a little deeper. And the word collaboration, I think, just came to mind. Like, it needs to be collaborative. It's not it's become very transactional. And I think that's where we're all just kind of getting tired of it.
So I think you hit a couple of things, and I've actually used that approach before, is where you caucus with the writers prior to the debrief. Yeah. It does require quite a bit more. And color teams, they're usually playing on the slot, on the fly here. I got like this time where I can get all the writers and all the reviewers in one place to kind of do that. But there is a lot of value in caucusing with the writing team to look in advance of the comments and the feedback to kind of accomplish what I had mentioned before, is pushing back and asking questions of the color team reviewers. A lot of times there's no questions of them, and I'll ask. I will openly even feed, I'll add some fuel to that fire a little bit sometimes if I know that there's a comment that I know, oh, writer so-and-so is not going to take likely to that. Mm-hmm. I'll sometimes open the door so that he can kind of walk through. But it does kind of you do have to have like an organizational shift and training and expectations and teach that person to really ask those questions and to kind of do that. So again, I think that's really a great like try to do and try to have. I think sometimes it's a little bit more challenging when you're a smaller organization and a smaller business where you're wearing many hats. You maybe have multiple opportunities and you can't quite take the same amount of time and effort and resources as maybe a larger company like a GDIT or whatever, into like doing that. So let's kind of press on here a little bit, because I got a couple of other like topics I want to touch on before we kind of close out here. We've kind of touched on a couple of things, but let's just kind of go to the end here about revolutionizing like this new approach and integrating where we are bringing in some technologies, because I want to leave time for us to kind of, talk about like the final segment about revolutionizing and putting this into like action. In your perfect world, what part of what you've laid out would you change, or how would you see things to kind of shake up color team reviews so that they're more thoughtful, more strategic, so that you can kind of win what you once thought was impossible?
Yeah. So again, I think the key takeaway that I want to just share with everyone who's tuning in is, your organization is unique to you. Whatever the structure, however many proposal team members, capture members, BD members, what the executive team looks like, all these people that make up the proposal. Like, when a proposal is happening, everyone kind of just becomes their own operating little business, right? And so whatever that looks like at your organization, you can tailor what Tan and I have said today to meet your needs. The key takeaway, and like I've said this in so many training sessions and speaking engagements, the key takeaway is do something, right? Do something, and it might feel a little different, and it might be asking a little bit more. And I think if you're in a position, maybe you're a proposal manager, or maybe you're a writer, or somebody who doesn't have decision-making power or capability in your organization, ask your team to try something. Say, hey, I've got an idea. I heard it, or you can take credit for it. This, like I said, this is not rocket science. We don't own these ideas. I've got this idea, and I was wondering if you guys would be willing to try this. I know we've got this deal coming up. It seems like it's very important to the company and to this unit, business unit, whatever. What if, and kind of take the little nuggets that we've talked about today and maybe make them as palatable as you can for your organization. What if we identified who's going to be our reviewers now? And what would you think about maybe inviting them to a gate review or a capture session or what, I don't know, again, whatever your processes are internally that you do to plan and prepare for a proposal, at least consider inviting them to kickoff. How many of you have ever had your entire review team with a slide in your kickoff deck that says, here's the reviewers? So that's something I have been successful in mandating and implementing, is that we should at least try to identify who the reviewers are at kickoff, or and start tapping them on the shoulder, being like, hey, we're probably going to be using you. What if we took that one step further to the left and engaged them in the strategic planning in some form or fashion, even if it's one meeting that you think that they would add value to, or that they would get value from, rather. So do something. So I think shaking things up a little bit is good. Asking if people are willing to try something a little different and seeing if it improves your outcomes. And it might not be, you're going to do it one time and be, have an epiphany or a magic, awakening, or have things significantly change. But maybe if you get people used to it, maybe you would start to see things trend in a different direction. Maybe people would start to feel less, frustrated when you give them an invite on a Tuesday for a Thursday color review. That's not fair. Like, that's not polite. It's unrealistic in expectation, and it is negatively affecting the quality of your work. So what if you tried something a little different?
Yeah, exactly. So in today's episode, we've kind of discussed evolving the landscape of color team reviews from like a traditional norm and proposing a more integrated approach, which is the approach that you're proposing here. This shift towards like early collaboration, strategic alignment, it's promising towards crafting a better proposal, a more balanced and less stressful type of environment to kind of meet and like exceed some very, very Herculean, like expectations, which is the expectation on most proposals. So like this balance between fresh perspectives and deep insights from the onset could really redefine successful, strategies. Thanks for recapping that.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to use AI to support you, right? It's a tool that's there. Again, the ethical use, do no harm. Don't upload or use it in ways that could be harmful to yourself or your business or anything like that. But getting some support and fact checking, evaluating, and, upscaling your writing is okay. And that can be helpful too.
Exactly. And we're going to touch on this, intellectuals, in our Keep the Change episode, which follows this episode. So don't worry, we'll get more into like a couple of AI tools that Rebecca dropped earlier here in our conversation. And we'll talk about one other surprising topic under Keep the Change that I think would be really helpful for our intellectuals here. But this concludes our episode on death to the color teams and debriefs. But don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and to tune in for more enlightening discussions every Wednesday. And thanks, Rebecca, for sharing your invaluable insights and experiences with us today. Your perspective is truly, truly illuminating. And the path forward for reimagining color teams is going to look very differently in the future.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been great.
Thanks again. So thanks all our intellectuals for listening today. And remember, you have to think big to win big. Be an intellectual. And until next time, keep pushing the boundaries for success.